Hello everyone, my name is Alex Hunt. I'm a consultant with IBIS. Today I was asked to speak about warehouse management options, since I've been working for a couple of different clients that use some different software along with AX for their warehouse management. On the agenda today, I'll quickly define what WMS means. I have a list of 7 general questions about what processes you might use that would lead you to using a WMS, and also a couple of questions about internal forces that would lead you to buy WMS and implement it. And then after that, we'll look at a comparison of the 3 basic options when you're looking for WMS. The first option is just to simply use base AX as it was designed. Maybe you have a low volume a distributor that doesn't require strict controls that a WMS would provide. The second option would be a WMS that's outside of your ERP system, so outside of AX, and then you'd have a interface that the 2 systems will talk through in order to update each other. And then the third option, which is growing in popularity, is to have your WMS embedded within your ERP. So this would just be an added module into AX, just like you have inventory management, accounts payable, accounts receivable. There'd be a shipping module that's added in and embedded within Dynamics AX. First topic, what is WMS? Basically, a warehouse management system, or WMS, is a key part of the supply chain, and it primarily aims to control the movement and storage of materials within a warehouse and processes associated with transactions, including shipping, receiving, put away, and picking. And the systems also direct and optimize stock put away based on real-time information about the status of your bin utilization without your warehouse. And then it's also important to note that a WMS can be a standalone system, such as Scale by Manhattan Associates, or it could be a module within AX, like McLane. Their warehouse G3 solution is embedded within AX. I'm just going to go down this list of questions. These are common questions you want to ask yourself when you're considering purchasing a WMS to go with your ERP system. First off, do you require a strict inventory control? For example, a WMS can require check digits to be entered by a user in order to put away a product at a location. And this is designed so a user, whether they're a full-time worker or a temp, could not mistakenly put away an item where it shouldn't be, since you'd have to enter the check digit each time. Now, this keeps better control and track of your inventory, but you have to take into account that if you're not currently using this process, there might be a growing pain with the user spending a little bit extra time and detail when they're doing the put away process. Second common question: do you have the need to move to using RF for automated data capture? This is basically using a radio frequency gun to scan items. This may be one of the biggest reasons you'd seek out WMS to track the handling of RF. The RF gun would allow you and your warehouse workers to simply scan barcodes instead of taking time to manually key numbers. And I've seen some organizations take it a step further and use hip printers for their warehouse workers, so they could scan a barcode and then print the labels right there at their station without having to walk back to a centralized printing station. And then some systems use this for scheduling purposes to see how long it would take you to perform a task. So the RF gun would time in when you're on a pick location and then time out when you're completed, so you can keep track of how long things are taking, how long they should take. And if someone goes on break or is spending a long time in the restroom, it'll actually time out, so you can keep track of who's kind of slacking, or it'll force them to log back in when they're ready to continue their work. Next question: do you have specific picking controls, and do you want to use wave picking? And this question really pertains to companies that have a high volume of orders that need to be picked, and the warehouse manager needs a suitable way to handle the work in the most efficient and controlled manner. So as the orders come into the system, the warehouse manager would organize them into groups or waves, and then they could be picked however he wanted. So that could be based on delivery schedule or priority or whatever, or speed of fulfillment. And he can group these separate output orders into one consolidated order to spread his work throughout the warehouse. Next question. Do you want to use directed put away? And this question is asking if you see value in building logic through rules that will have the system tell a warehouse worker what item to put away first and what locations would fit best, or what locations are closest to them, so it would take less time for them to walk to a certain location first. The system could have rules in place to separate hazardous materials from non-hazardous materials, and based on the scan, the system would know whether it's in one category or the other, and so it would direct you not to store hazardous and non-hazardous materials together in one location because they could potentially be contaminated. Obviously, this is all great functionality anyone would want, but you have to also consider that you're going to have to manage all of this new information. So in order for the system to know how far a location is away from a picker, or how which items would fit best in certain locations, you're going to have to put in certain coordinates for your bin locations into the system so it can measure the distance. You'll have to measure the dimensions of all of your locations, of your rack locations, and also your item dimensions, so the system will know which items will fit in which rack locations. So luckily, that setup is normally a one-time setup that you do during the initial implementation, and then the system will store that information and be able to use it for years to come. But obviously, that first setup is going to take some time, and it is a little tedious, but you just have to weigh your return on investment down in the future after you have the system managing all this information for you. And then the final question related to process is, do you want to manage detailed truck delivery schedules? For example, this is asking if you manage the communications with your carriers to the level where you can schedule them for specific bay doors in order to most efficiently book multiple shipments that are arriving during the same period. So that's just a question if you're currently doing that, or if you see the potential to do it in the future. It can make things move a lot more smoothly. Obviously, if you don't have a lot of shipments at one time and trucks aren't fighting for the same bay location, then this is really an issue for you. And then finally, the last two questions are more internal questions. First one, is your IT team comfortable with the integration points for the WMS? As I hinted in the agenda to start with, one option is to have a separate WMS that's outside of AX that has an integration point, and the second option is to have the WMS embedded into AX. So for the first one, if it's outside of AX, you have to make sure your IT team has specifically looked at how that interface is going to work for you. The scale interface from Manhattan Associates has several settings to see what is waiting status and what's executed, what's errored. If something is errored in the interface, you can look at the XML and see what items might have been set up incorrectly. But part of that troubleshooting is a manual process. Now, if everything's set up correctly and working fine, the scale interface will just run on a batch every 30 minutes or every 15 minutes, however long you want to set it, and it'll automatically feed information to and from AX. So that part of it's automated, but you just have to be aware with how comfortable you are navigating around that interface. And then the last question, which is also internal, is do you have the resources available to make the investment in WMS? Now, it is expensive. It is quite an investment to add on to AX. However, some companies feel that in order to stay competitive, they need that extra level of control within their system. The majority of clients I've worked with have invested in a WMS to add on to AX. One of them had the Scale product that had the interface, and the other client that I've worked with had it embedded within AX, and both are working fine. It's just up to the preference of your IT team and your core team. The other part of that investment, besides the monetary value, is the investment in time it's going to take to retrain employees who aren't used to putting in these controls, these check digits, using directed put away, having the system tell them things they're not used to being told. So there might be growing pains with their processes initially being slowed down to put in something like a check digit, or as far as processing item dimensions. But in the long run, you'll get a lot more efficiency after your employees have become acclimated to all of those controls that are put in the system. Here's just a graphic you can briefly read for yourself about the Scale sales material. It talks about how it optimizes your labor management and your billing management, your inventory management, all of those sorts of things. And the important thing to consider with Scale is on this next slide. This is a screenshot of the interface, the gateway queue, which is the link between AX and Scale. And you can see that one of the statuses I mentioned briefly, these are in waiting status, so these are coming up from Scale, and you can see that it'll tell you whether it's item data, receipt data, shipment data. On that show status drop down, there's also a drop down for error, so you can find which receipts or shipments or items passed up and errored and didn't make it to AX, and you can click the log button and see what items might have triggered that, what items might have been set up incorrectly, had conflicting unit of measures in both systems, so you drill down in it that way. So that's an extra step that you'd have to manage that you wouldn't have to if the solution was embedded within AX as a separate module. And here's a brief look at McLane and their product warehouse, warehouse 3G. A lot of the squares here match up with the same functionality you get from Scale, except this is a newer product. Not as many clients around the country have used this as they have Scale, which has been around a lot longer. But the benefit is that it is embedded in AX. You don't have to navigate around an interface or manually look at errors that might have not fed back up to AX. There's a few interesting things about this product. I don't know if you're familiar with McLane, but they are the supply chain company that was bought out by Walmart in the early 90s, and this is the IP, the intellectual property that Walmart has used to become, the premier supply chain company in the world. That intellectual property is what McLane also built into this software. They partnered with Microsoft to build their best-of-breed WMS from those same principles that Walmart also utilize. And then here's a chart that's on the next few slides. It discusses the comparison between AX on the left, Scale in the middle, and then the McLane Warehouse 3G functionality on the right. I'll let you read through this on your own, but the main things to point out is you'll see the bullets down the left side are matching up exactly with what's on the far right side with the McLane functionality, and that's because it is embedded. You don't duplicate the functionality, you build on it. So if you look at the first line for cross-docking, for AX it says transfer inventory from one location to another using a transfer journal, and then on the top line for Warehouse 3G you'll see the exact same thing, transfer inventory from one location to another using a transfer journal, and then they're built upon it on each one of these levels down, directed put away, cycle counting, and replenishment. Whereas with Manhattan, you're not using the same standard AX functionality. In some cases, you duplicate standard AX functionality, and then they build on it from there. So that's just a key thing to note when you're looking at which WMS to go with. Are you comfortable with the level the AX functionality has been duplicated, or do you want to really be streamlined and not duplicate any AX functionality? You want to use what's there and then build upon it with an embedded solution. The next slide is a continuation of the comparisons for order processing, cartonization, and picking. And I know these slides are pretty detailed, but I have my email on the last slide where I can send you this slide deck if you're interested after the fact. And then the last comparison slide talks about equipment definition, labor management, carrier compliance, outbound quality control, and BI. And again, you can see the similarities between AX and the embedded solution, and then you can see that middle column, that scale, that's built out separate from AX and doesn't utilize the standard functionality. If you have any questions, you can email info@ibisinc.com, or if you have any questions specifically of me, you can email me at ahunt@ibisinc.com, and I'd be happy to send you the slide deck or answer any questions. Thank you for your time. I hope you have a little bit more insight into what things to look for when you're considering whether to invest in a WMS, stick with basic AX, or whether to go with an outside solution versus an embedded solution with your warehouse management system. Thank you for your time.